Hello from the great city of New York, I'm Lucas Alexander. Learning to Live Out Loud is the title of Piper Laurie's just newly published autobiography. Piper Laurie just turned 80 years old 1 week ago. She's the 3-time Academy Award nominee, Emmy winner, Golden Globe winner, and has been acting for 63 years. I sat down to talk to Piper Laurie about her amazing career, her book, and her many famous movies. Right now I'm in New York City with one of my favorite people in the world, the great, amazing Piper Laurie, who just turned 80 and is actually making her debut as a writer in the great new book, Learning to Live Out Loud.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's so great. And you wrote the entire book by yourself with no co-writer?
Right.
Was that something you felt very strongly about doing?
Yes. I didn't care if it was good or bad, or if it was published, but I had to do it myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is it like giving all these personal details and secrets finally from your life after all these years, all of a sudden?
Well, I never thought, just the same as the acting process, I didn't really think about what the audience was going to think. I just tried to wipe that from my mind as I was writing, because I never could have done it. And I had no idea if the book would get published. So I just put it all down, the things that I wanted, the things that I thought were interesting, that I had experienced, and people I've known. And I didn't really think about how people were going to respond until it was all done. And then my publisher said, "Ms. Laurie, are you sure you really want to do this?" And I began to be just a little bit nervous when she said that.
Why do you think she said that?
Well, I didn't ask.
All right.
But I assume I've told some secrets, things that I've kept secret all my life.
You definitely have, and it's an absolutely wonderful book. It's incredible that you've been an actress for almost 63 years. How has the entertainment business changed over all these years since you started in Hollywood in 1949, 1950?
I think essentially it's not changed. Superficially it has, and there are more people doing it. People don't care as much. And I think the people behind projects are not motivated by the things that used to motivate producers.
So you think it's become more about looks and appearance and more superficial than when you started?
It's become about money.
All about money.
Just the very thing, all people want to know, at least in Los Angeles, is what the box office returns were. It's not how good the movie was, but how much, which one made the most money over the weekend. What did that have to do with acting? Something beautiful and creative?
Exactly. Yeah. And you became a Universal contract player at the end of the golden era. And you were mainly cast because of your looks as the pretty young girl. And what was it like to do all of these movies at that time and that early in your career, in your life?
I was surprised. I didn't understand that Universal International, as it was known in those days, was a factory of making program pictures, mostly B pictures. I was just thrilled that they wanted to put me under contract and that I'd get to be paid for doing the only thing I knew how to do. And actually, when I auditioned, they instead of stopping me after 3 minutes of my audition material, they let me do the whole one-act play, the Tennessee Williams one-act play.
And you could do it?
Yes, I could do it.
You knew all the lines already? You had studied the whole
yes,
play?
I had done it in class. And the actor who had played the little part in it was mostly a monologue. And there was a little boy in it, and so my actor friend came with me, and I brought my props and my banana and little doll, crazy doll, and I walked along the railroad tracks. At the 3-minute mark, a little piece of my brain was listening for the, thank you, Miss Jacobs. I was not Piper Laurie quite yet. But they let me go on for 20, 25 minutes. It was a piece of material that I was very close to. And I had a natural understanding of this little girl. So they seemed very touched by it.
Yeah.
Tears in their eyes. And I thought, oh, they really understand that I'm a serious actress. And I had been working seriously for 3 years in this terrific acting class. Mm-hmm. And then they made a screen test with me and Rock Hudson together and signed both of us. And threw me immediately into my first movie, which was playing Ronald Reagan's little daughter.
What was it like? That was Louisa in 1950. Yeah. What was it actually like working with Ronald Reagan? And you also started dating him during that time, and he was playing your father, right, in the movie.
Well, it didn't quite happen that way.
All right.
We made the movie first.
Okay.
I was working with Ronald Reagan, Ruth Huzzy, Charles Coburn, Edmund Gwenn, all these fantastic actors with great bodies of work that I didn't know at that time. And they were lovely with me. They didn't treat me like a little kid. I had a featured part. I had a substantial role. I was like their little sister. And they all asked me to call them by their first names, which I never would have done without an invitation. It was terrific. It was terrific.
Wow. Did Ronald Reagan...
The material was stupid.
Oh, the material was not good?
Yes.
No. You didn't like playing those characters in the beginning at all?
And it got worse as it went on. Yes.
Well, did Reagan ever talk to you about politics or talk to you about his interest in that?
No, he was president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time. And he was charming and kind and would bring me, and we had these little dressing rooms on the sets at those times with big wheels that they could move around any spot. And they were cozy little things with a little sofa and a closet and a dressing table. And you go to the bathroom to the outside buildings. And everyone kept their doors open all the time. And he would often invite me in to sit and talk and ask if everything was all right. And
so he was very...
could help in any way.
So he was helpful to you as an actress?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. In 1953, you did a movie called Has Anybody Seen My Gal?
Yes.
With Rock Hudson.
Yes.
And there was also...
Are you going to ask me to sing?
Well, there was this duet, which was an absolutely amazing duet you did in this car with Rock Hudson.
Yes.
So you actually, you recorded your first song in 1953.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a story behind that. Anybody See My Gal was directed by Douglas Sirk, who is worshipped by film lovers today. And I found him quite unpleasant.
Did you really?
I did, really. And before, there was a little scene where I was supposed to sing a little song. And they all said, well, we have to see if you can sing. I never imagined that I'd have to be a singer. I mean, I was playing a character who sang a little song. I didn't think I had to be particularly good. They went to the sound stage, and I remember Abe Lassville, the head of the William Morris office, was there. So Douglas Sirk and the heads of the studio, and they didn't put me in the booth. I was right there, and they gave me the sheet music and piano playing, and I sang the song, and I just froze. I mean, it was all this pressure, and I didn't sound very good. And I didn't even finish the song. Douglas Sirk stood there. He said, well, get somebody else. And they did. I was probably Marnie Nixon, you know, the woman who does everybody singing for them. I was mortified.
So it wasn't you singing?
No.
It does sound like you, though.
But in Ain't Misbehavin, I sang 5 numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And later on, which I'm going to ask you about, the occult movie you did called Ruby.
Yes.
where you did an amazing performance. You also sang a lot in that song, actually, didn't you? And you recorded the songs.
That's right. I've forgotten.
Yeah. A movie that a lot of people may not know, but they should really check it out. And
Curtis Harrington made a trip to some film festival in Europe and came back and called me, the director of the movie. And this was years and years later. He said, well, I met Leni Riefenstahl. I don't know if I pronounced her name right.
Leni Riefenstahl, yeah.
Yes. And she called me she called Curtis Harrington. This is shortly before she passed away.
Wow.
She wanted to meet him because Ruby was one of her favorite movies.
Was it really?
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't that amazing?
I couldn't believe it.
Leni Riefenstahl?
Yes.
Wow. What's that?
Is that my turn?
I've just cut it for a moment.
Sorry.
That is so amazing that Leni Riefenstahl actually loved that particular film, Ruby, from 1978.
Yes.
Wow. So she was a fan of yours, huh? Kind of.
Or maybe of Curtis Harrington.
Okay.
The producer made changes.
All right.
In the end of the movie, and had fake actors. I mean, they were real people, but they were us doing some underwater scary things. And I think that was Curtis's gesture of...
Yeah. Wow, interesting, interesting.
Plus some of the gory deaths were edited out, I think, as well.
And they were. There were some bits and pieces showing which was supposedly you and made underwater.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Has Anybody Seen My Gal from 1953. There was a young actor who did his first cameo appearance in it with you, James Dean.
Yes.
Is it
extraordinary?
Would you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, I had no idea he was sitting there at the counter in the drugstore. I was aware that there was an extra there, but I was concentrated on my dialogue in the scene and working with Rock Hudson. It was maybe 20 years later, I got a phone call from my famous Uncle Maury, who lived in New York, and he said, "Sissy, I was just watching Has Anybody Seen My Gal on television. Do you know who was sitting in the drugstore with you? James Dean."
Wow.
Nobody was particularly aware of who he was.
And not everybody knows that he actually appeared in that movie today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was it? Well, so you didn't get to know him personally at the time, did you? Not before he died. What was it like working with Rock Hudson? You've done quite a few things with him.
Yes, Rock Hudson and I were good friends before we did our screen test together. And he was a good pal. And my mother used to feed him a lot, and we had a lot of fun. He took me to my first circus. We were good friends. It was always fun to work with him.
Oh, that's great. Which one of your early films from the 50s do you consider to be your favorite, or maybe the best movie of those you did in those years?
I think the one that they certainly spent more money on it. And I think they considered it their kind of A movie was Mississippi Gambler.
Yes.
I certainly had a lot of costumes.
That was a beautiful costume piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the best one of those of that era.
Yes. I would think so.
But you left Hollywood in what was it, 57 or 58 to go to New York, here in New York?
Actually, I finally broke my contract in 1955.
You broke your contract?
Yes, and I agreed that I would do a picture a year for 3 years for almost no money for Universal to get out of the contract.
Why did you want so desperately to get out of that contract?
Well, it's fun for us to talk about those movies now, but I just felt that it wasn't what I was doing. What I wasn't doing what I was good at. I wanted to be playing real people, and in things that were written with care. And,
are you very intuitive?
I am yes. About anything in particular?
About your your decision making, what you want to do, what you want to appear in, what you want to do with your life as an actress?
Yes.
Professionally?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah, because later on, say from 1976, when I'll get to that, you've played so many different types of characters and very many real people, also some really crazy people, but a great versatile mix. Really very different from what you did in the 50s. But you went to New York and you went here to do live television live television that was shown to the nation live. What was that? Must have been such a grueling experience. What was that like?
Well, first of all, I wanted to do live television because that's where all the exciting work was being done, and the new directors were doing such good work. But no one would let me do it because I had a reputation of being an insipid, I don't know what, but I came to New York to audition for a play that I would have been perfect for the role, and the playwright came out to the audience, the waiting room, and said, "Come with me," and he took me to the hallway and he said, "I'm sorry, Miss Laurie, we can't let you audition because we can't have a Piper Laurie and what she stands for in our play." And I was deeply confused and hurt, and flew back to California. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to change whatever Piper Laurie stands for. And it took me a long time before I got a part.
That was when you realized that you were not being taken seriously as an actress?
I knew I wasn't being taken seriously. I mean, I took a look at some of those reviews at first, and they were so cruel but they didn't understand that I thought the work was worse than they did. You know, but they had a great time, the writers, the critics, because I was really out there doing all this publicity and being famous for wearing bathing suits and eating flowers and things like that.
You were eating flowers,
yeah.
Yes. What was that about? How did that come about?
From my first movie, Edmund Gwenn is showing off for Spring Byington, and he plucks the petals from marigolds and the centerpiece of the dining table and throws them into his salad. And a few minutes later, Fred Banker, the publicity man on the set, came to me and said, "Yeah, I have an idea." And there was spark, his eyes were flaming, you know. And he called all the wire service and said, their new contract player had ate nothing but flowers. And all these people came to interview me for days in the commissary. The commissary put together these meals with beautiful flowers, and I ate them, you know.
You did.
Then I went home and my parents said, "Well, how was your day today?" And I was just so demoralized from what my career had become.
You could understand
that I couldn't even talk about it.
Yes. So, but you were put in one live television program,
and that was only because my friend from acting class from before Universal recommended me to the director.
Days of Wine and Roses.
No. This was before that. It was Robert Montgomery Presents. It was an hour-long live show, and I had to throw this big portrait at the end in the last scene of the show, and they only had the prop budget wasn't that big, so they wouldn't let me throw it during rehearsals. But I was strong, and I knew I'd be okay. But what I did was during the air, I threw it at the camera that was shooting me. So it's a very effective shot.
Wow. You had a temper.
Oh, the character did.
The character did, not you.
And I was seen by creative people who took me seriously at last.
And millions of people around the nation, of course, in that.
Yes. Those live television shows were real events.
Yeah.
Everyone watched them.
Mm-hmm. And then you did the original version of Days of Wine and Roses.
Right.
And wasn't that like the first really great part that you
played substantial part? Something you wanted to do?
I think all the live shows, I was very selective. And I put myself on a strict budget so that I could turn everything down unless it was really good. I think I had a lot of wonderful shows I did. Playhouse 90 was the first hour and a half show, so it got a lot of attention. And it also won all sorts of awards.
I wish some of those were on DVD today so we could see it. Days of Wine and Roses.
It is
on DVD.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
In 1961, then you appeared in the legendary movie The Hustler, playing the girl with the limp, Sarah Packard. Your performance earned you your first Academy Award nomination, and you should have won the Oscar, obviously, for it. What was it like playing the part of this slightly alcoholic, bohemian girl with no direction, really? What was it like to go into this character, different kind of work?
I guess I got very deeply into her, more deeply than I realized, because it took me so many years to see the movie afterwards and see it objectively. And just recently I've seen the movie on a big screen, and
So you didn't like it at first?
And I just didn't appreciate what Paul Newman and I had done. I just saw the sweat and the hammers and nails, and I just didn't see any of the emotion that I was actually expecting to see.
So now you could see it objectively more.
Yes.
And see the great performances that you're both giving in this amazing film. And see from a different point of view now.
Yes.
What was it like to work with Paul Newman and George C. Scott?
I had worked with George C. Scott. I mean, you can call it that. We were in the same show, but we didn't speak. We didn't speak on The Hustler either. I mean, I was terrified of him, and I used that. I savored that to use in the as an actor.
What did he do to frighten you?
Well, first of all, he showed up in the rehearsal hall. This was for Winterset. We did it live. And I played Mary Omni, and Don Murray played Mio. And George would show up in the morning, a little bit late, bloodied and bruised with bandages. And the gossip was that he had been in a fight the night before. He hit a woman. It was terrible. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with him. I don't think we were even introduced, and he would always hang out by himself on the other side of the rehearsal hall.
Wow. Yeah. So you didn't even rehearse the scenes that you did together before shooting?
We didn't really have any scenes together. But for
The Hustler.
live television, you work, depending on the length of the show, for about 2 weeks. And with tape, they would block out the sets. And you'd work that way where the entrances were, and then until you finally got to work on the actual set was a very brief time.
Wow. Did you keep in touch with Paul Newman after The Hustler?
I did, and I got married a short time after that, not too long after that, and I told him on the telephone, and he said the weirdest thing, and I never had a chance to ask him what he meant. He said, well, have a ball, because it may not last very long.
Wow. And he was married to Joanne Woodward forever, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, which is interesting.
So, I don't know.
Well, after The Hustler, you also appeared on the stage. You did Shakespeare.
Well, I also did the Glass Menagerie.
You did the Glass Menagerie.
Yeah. I did another play in Chicago.
Yes.
Not Turn of the Screw, but it's the play version of that, The Innocents.
Why did you take off all those years?
I was just sick of acting and the life of. I lost my respect for the life of the actor, because the world was changing, the civil rights movement had begun. And I was becoming more aware of the world.
Were you?
Yeah, the word started too.
Were you interested in politics and what's going on in the world? And are you still interested in that?
I'm always, yes, I am. Yeah, I was ignorant and naive and just brutally deprived of reality for the first almost 20 years of my life. Just so steeped in theater and acting and just wasn't interested in anything else.
So what did you do all those years when you were married and you had your daughter before going back to acting again?
I was an art major in school, and so I went back to study at the Art Students League in New York, and accidentally found the sculpture class. I'd never seen stone carving before, and I fell in love with it. And so when we moved up to upstate New York, I had a studio and I carved stone, and I became an excellent bread baker. I baked all of my bread for years and years.
And you still bake?
I do. I grind my own wheat. So
do you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a nice machine that grinds it.
Oh, that's great. And what about all your artwork? You have all that still?
I do. I won't sell my sculpture. I've had a couple of exhibits, but I don't work with power tools, so it takes me 10 times as long as somebody else to do a piece of marble.
Mm-hmm. Would you do another exhibition maybe with your work at one point?
Who knows?
Wow, great. In 1976, you made a triumphant return to the screen in Carrie, legendary movie by Brian De Palma, Stephen King's Carrie. And it's become really a classic horror film. And you play this religiously fanatic mother to Sissy Spacek. And what convinced you to come back and to do this role?
I just had some feelings. I began to think that it was not such a bad thing to be a performer, and that art and entertainment had a real place in this world, even if it was just to give somebody a chance to have a good belly laugh. And I just thought it would be fun to either work in the theater, or once I mentioned to my husband, it might be fun to go back and do a movie.
And he had never experienced you doing a film before, had he? Because you got married after The Hustler.
No, I'd already done The Hustler, and he had come to interview me about it. So 15 years had passed, and he said, "Well, too much time has gone by. It's too late. Nobody's going to hire you." But shortly after that, somebody thought of me, Brian De Palma wanted to meet me, and so I went into the city to meet him.
Wow! And how did that go?
Fine. I figured he probably wouldn't know who I was, know anything about my work a long time. And he was young, and I was getting stories from people like, didn't you used to be Piper Laurie? Or sometimes they'd ask my sister, didn't you used to be Piper Laurie's sister?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It used to be.
As if she decided not to be. So I knew that he probably would know who I was. And if he did, I don't know if he did or not. But he didn't ask me any questions about myself. And he just told me about himself. And as if to put me at ease. It was as if he was trying to get a job from me. Mm-hmm. And I thought he was charming and very nice. And took the train back to Woodstock, where I was living, and heard right away that he wanted me to be in the movie.
It's such an interesting choice to have you doing this after maybe having seen some of the old movies, because this was so much, this was the new path, actually. What was it like to be this outrageous, this wild, this crazy?
Oh, it was wonderful fun. Because I no longer it was not a life or death experience for me, working in front of the camera. And I just thought the character was just so outrageous. I didn't really believe her. And so first I worked on it as a comedy. but that's what I thought it was. And I worked out at some physical business that I thought would be funny. And when I got to the rehearsal period in Brian's living room, and I was doing a scene with Sissy, and I did it twice, I thought it was pretty funny. And Brian said, "Wait a minute, Piper, you can't do it that way. You're going to get a laugh." I thought, oh my God, he doesn't mean for it to be funny. So
You thought it was supposed to be funny.
yes. So I decided to, okay. We never talked about it, but what it did is drove me deeper into who this woman was really, really on the inside, and made that more powerful, stronger. Did almost the same thing with the same dialogue.
An incredible lunatic, that woman, huh? Especially that scene with the carrots. Even that, it's a small scene, but it just really shows who she is.
Well, I saw a screening of Carrie not so long ago, one of those audience participation things. It's become a sort of cult thing.
Absolutely.
And there was the master of ceremony was commenting throughout the movie, in addition to the audience saying the lines together with me.
Oh, wow.
And for that moment when that overhead shot of me chopping on the carrots, the MC said, Margaret finds relaxation in cutting carrots.
That's great. Wow, that's amazing. Well, that's a funny thing, yeah. Wow. That's really, and that last scene is probably the most incredible death scene in movie history. How was that done with all of those knives that were like put into your, what happened there?
Technically, it was simple. They had a steel vest on me and underneath the gown with tiny little metal things holding wire. The wire came through the fabric and stretched out 15 feet to where the prop man was. And one by one, he would attach a can opener or whatever, and it would slowly bobble its way on the wire about like this until it would finally hit me, and then I would react. And, they speeded up the film. And for each of the things that hit me, that it would just bum, 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 which was hilarious, and I tried to not lose it so that I could react properly when it actually hit me. Mm-hmm. But when they'd cut and I had a chance, I was just howled with laughter. It was.
Yeah, I can understand that. In fact, I think that your performance, the whole performance of Margaret White, is actually, you give it a lot of, don't mind me saying this, a lot of sexuality during the whole thing, actually. Mm-hmm. There's like a woman who's never really had the sexual release, and it seems like this is what actually she's getting at the end. Kind of.
I'll say.
Definitely. And that actually gave you a reputation as a cult, as a horror queen. And that was, and that I think, and I think that actually, that gave you that landed you that role in Ruby, where you played the lead star in that.
No one had seen the movie yet. When I did Ruby, they hadn't even put the movie, Carrie together.
Really?
Yeah.
It was that fast after?
Yeah.
Wow. Because that's actually a movie that has not gotten the recognition it deserves. Your performance is very intense and very wild.
I think Europeans tend to feel that way. I think a lot of people in this country have not seen it.
You've also played many, many, many mothers in your later career from 76. You played the mother of Judy Garland in the movie of her early life, Rainbow, 1978. And you played the mother of Mae West in 1981. And you also played the mother of the deaf actress Molly Madeline in Children of a Lesser God from
Yes.
86. And that earned you your third Academy Award nomination. What was that like to do that movie and actually have to learn sign language? Because you used that in the film.
Yes, it was exciting to learn to sign. And I got, my teacher would come every day and I'd work on it. And I got quite good at it and then realized that my character is not supposed to be good. She resents the whole issue of the deafness and doesn't want to. She has not worked at signing, so I stopped taking my lessons and tried to wipe what I could out of my brain, so that it was hesitating and I had to really think hard for the things.
Mm-hmm. It's a very deep emotional character. It's not a huge part you have in the movie, but it's a very important part with that. What was it like working with Molly Madeline?
Exciting to work with. She had a lot of energy and she was very focused on the work. It was nice, very nice.
Wow. You also played the mother of the late Patrick Swayze in Tiger Warsaw.
My goodness.
In 1988.
Yeah.
And that's also a film that a lot of people should see if they haven't seen it. It's a very wonderful and very strong role. And you also played the mother of Matt Damon in Rising Sun in 1990. What was it like? Any memories from working with both Patrick Swayze and Matt Damon?
Yes, Patrick was very serious about the work. There was one scene, the reunion scene he's escaped, I don't remember the plot, but I think he's escaped from jail or something. I hadn't seen it for a long, long time.
Yeah, he did something to the family and had a big fallout with the father, and then he was away for 16 years.
Yes.
And then he sneaks back.
Yes.
And you're the only one, the mother is the only one who welcomes him back
Yes.
when everybody else doesn't want to see him.
Yes. He didn't want to rehearse our scene, her coming together. And that was fine. I remember the director told me before we did it that I should kiss Patrick on the mouth, which I thought was an interesting piece of direction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very strong emotional scene, and you never rehearsed that one.
No.
So it is very spontaneous and very deep.
Yeah.
That's why it's very intense. What about Matt Damon in Rising Sun? You did that with him and
Yes.
and
Brian
Dennehy.
Yes. Matt was just a shining star with that blazing smile and so intelligent. And he was very respectful of anyone who worked hard I liked him. As a person. He had a lot of maturity.
And he became a big star after some time after that. But you were talking just now about having to kiss Patrick Swayze. But there was one actor whom you gave his first on-screen kiss. One of your most amazing performances in 1979 with Mel Gibson in Tim.
Oh, I thought you were saying it's the first time he'd been kissed.
No, probably not, but his first on-screen kiss was with you, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
What was it like working on this film? This is one of your best performances ever. Really, very strong.
I was crazy about Mel Gibson. He was just delicious to look at. Just dear and charming and sweet and serious about the work. A little bewildered because he'd never made a movie before. His other movies were released, the Mad Maxes were released afterwards.
That's true.
And this was a soft movie, and it was hard to find an audience in the States, so they waited until he was sort of a star before they released it.
Really?
Yeah.
It had a controversial theme with this more mature woman and the younger man. A very interesting, a very deep emotional character you are playing as well. It really deserves a lot of attention now. And I think, of course, it got that after Mel became a big star after that.
I love it when people come up to me and say, not many, but they do, they say that they've seen it on television. And how much they liked it.
It's one of his best performances, and it's also
he was terrific.
Yeah, and because it's very different from what he went on to do. And you were very amazing, of course, in this. It's very, very good film. What was it like playing something completely different a couple of years later as a Jewish girl, playing Magda Goebbels in The Bunker with Anthony Hopkins as Hitler? In 1981 you did that. What was that like? That's a historic figure, obviously, who kills her children.
I'd done a lot of research, a lot of reading about the Goebbels, and particularly Magda. It's all so vivid in my mind. The people made a point of saying Goebbels' hands were so large and they were very expressive, and he'd give speeches and use his hands, and the women were so seduced by that. And Magda was supposed to be a very beautiful woman. I saw pictures of her with her braided hair.
And you had that too in the film.
And she also was, she seemed like a decent woman who was in love with her husband, but also had a special feeling for Hitler, which was hard to understand. But she would cook things for him sometimes, make him his cereal. They were all very close. And she was one of the few people that Hitler didn't require to have somebody taste the food first. And they were all together in the bunker those last few days before the Allies came. And it was decided they'd kill themselves, and she had to, as gently as possible, put her children to sleep. And she poisoned them. It just with chocolates.
So do you think she was crazy, or was it just something that had to be done because of the situation she was in?
I think it was the situation she was in. But how can I don't think she was crazy. She was inflicted like everyone else in that country with madness, like a special kind of madness, lack of reality. And
were you affected at all by the war? You were growing up during those war years. Of course, you lived in Detroit.
No, during those. I left Detroit when I was 5, and I went to live in an asylum. I mean, it was a rest home for children, and I was there for 3 years with my sister. And I didn't see my parents during those 3 years. But every once in a while, some of the children would come back from vacations and talk about what was happening out there. And I knew that there was Hitler and that there were Nazis and they were killing Jews. And I knew I was Jewish, and I said, why are they killing Jews? It was one of the few times I was able to verbalize something because I was alarmed. And this little girl said, well, they're doing it because the Jews are so smart. I thought, well, I'm not smart, but maybe I will be one day.
So you remember that?
Oh, yes.
You remember the war.
And I used to have dreams that there was one of the head nurses at this place, Mrs. Schwartz. She was so mean, really cruel. And I used to have dreams that she was actually Hitler in disguise. And I slew them, both of them, a number of times.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why you were so good in some of those horror films, huh? You had early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. That is very, very interesting. You also did a lot of, you did the legendary television series, The Thornbirds.
Yeah.
And you also appeared in other TV shows such as Saint Elsewhere with a young Denzel Washington. And you played George Clooney's mother on ER. And you appeared with Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote.
Yes.
But the most extraordinary TV series you ever did was, of course, Twin Peaks. Absolutely incredible. That became the most, and still is the most cultish television show I think ever made in America by David Lynch. And on Twin Peaks, you were playing these two remarkable characters, the sophisticated and ruthless Catherine Martell, and you also appeared as the Japanese actor Fumio Yamaguchi.
Very well said.
Playing the Japanese businessman Mr. Tsuchimura. Now, what was that like, and how did those two characters come about?
Well, I had met David Lynch several times briefly at friends' homes, and I admired his work, and I thought it would be fun to do the pilot of Twin Peaks. It was, I think, 3 hours or something. It was a teeny little part, but I thought it would be fun to work with him. I thought he was an interesting director. And I had to sign up for a series, which, of course, it wouldn't happen, because those things never happen. So I was really surprised when I found that my life was now going to be a little not in my control. I resented it a little bit. It was a little like being back at Universal, but they began to write some interesting things for me to play, and so I ultimately was really glad that I'd done it. David was interesting to work with, but he didn't direct all the shows. They had many guest directors.
Was it difficult to work with different directors, or
no? It was stimulating. It was stimulating, and also it gave the actors a sense of confidence, false confidence, thinking they knew more than the director.
Because they knew the character.
Yeah.
But how did you create these two amazing characters? I mean, they were very meaty roles, wonderful roles, and some of the most remarkable roles in that show, actually.
Well, I just thought Catherine she was a bitch.
She was a bitch.
Yes.
She was a little bit like Alexis on Dynasty by Joan Collins. The same kind of thing, wasn't it? She was the tough woman, the older, beautiful, kind of assertive.
You know, she wanted what she wanted when she wanted it.
Yeah.
And she had a lover, and she had her husband, Jack Nance, who is, when I appeared as Fumio Yamaguchi and had many scenes with him, the first day he went to and no one was supposed to know, the cast and the crew. He went to the producers, to David and Mark Frost, first day. He said, "Boy, is that new actor weird." But
he had had so many scenes, probably most of his scenes with you as Catherine.
There was one scene we were so close at a bar, I remember, and I could hardly keep a straight face because I was really pushing it.
And he never knew.
No, he never knew. He didn't know until weeks and weeks later he received a script in which I revealed myself to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where he drops the coffee and you jump on him.
Yes,
almost.
yes.
Yeah. Wow. So there he knew.
It was very important to David that the cast and crew not know. They were told to be very respectful of Fumio Yamaguchi, who had come over from Japan, from working primarily with Kurosawa. And he learned his part phonetically, and I would have my Japanese assistant with me, and David cast him as my assistant in the movie as well. And he would speak real Japanese to me on the set, while we were working on takes, and the director would have to not know and give the direction to my assistant, tell me, and we'd have these little mumbling conversations, Derek with his real Japanese and me with fake Japanese, and I said, tell him Kurosawa doesn't work like that. So, I upset so many of the new directors, it was terrible.
So you were actually, oh, that's so great. So you were actually acting while acting.
Yeah.
That must, You were talking so much about your early work in the 50s, but now doing this, I mean, this is really amazing. That means you're really doing what you really want to do, right?
Be Harpo Marx.
Do something really extraordinary.
Yeah.
And that show, I guess you're faced with that show a lot these days, right? A lot of people talk about Twin Peaks and how remarkable it was. Have you seen the whole show yourself?
No, I haven't.
You haven't?
No.
Not even then?
No. I saw a few of the shows, yes.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that Twin Peaks became so successful?
Well, I think it was the first of stories that's been imitated a lot. It had a different rhythm that we're used to, and made you think. You may not arrive at anything worthwhile, but it made you think.
It certainly did. There was an amazing chemistry between you and Richard Beymer in those scenes you did together. What was he like to work with?
I'm sorry. I just thought of something that I just can't tell on camera, but it was. He was awfully good, but he was very naive in a way.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Do you mostly like to play these conniving, evil women, such as Catherine Martell and many others you've done, or the more sweet, embracing women that you've played equally as much? What is most interesting to you as an actress?
It depends on how well they're written and if they're really grounded in some kind of reality. There's a purpose in creating that, presenting that character. I don't really care with it.
Mm-hmm. Another very evil woman you played was as Emily Boynton in Agatha Christie's Appointment with Death from 1988. And you were starring opposite legends like Sir Peter Ustinov, Sir John Gielgud,
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher, Lauren Bacall. Do you have any memories from doing this role? Any memories of Peter Ustinov, Lauren Bacall?
Well, they were wonderful, and I had met Lauren Bacall a few times, very briefly before, and we met in London and flew over to Israel when we shot the whole movie. We flew together on the same plane, and she said, "Oh, two Jewish girls going to Israel together for the first time." She was terrific and funny, very fond of her. But the thing that stands out is many things stand out. And frankly, I had to cut about 100 pages from my book, and included in those pages were a lot of what happened in Israel that I was just very wonderful and interesting for me.
Really?
But Michael Winner was the director, and he had a reputation of being a very difficult man if he decided that you were going to be his victim. And so I'd heard horrible stories of how he humiliated women mostly, although not necessarily just women. And I decided that I would protect myself, because if I were vulnerable on the set and he got me, that I would just be destroyed, wouldn't be able to do the work. So I created a persona for myself. It was like a super persona of almost the same character I was playing, a really tough, like steel woman who was outrageous and would say or do anything. And I kept him off balance by doing that. He was a little intimidated by me.
Wow, thank God, huh? Well, that's amazing. So you actually did that at
Yes.
Emily Boynton character, because that's one of your most unbelievable. I think it's really so strong. Such a strong performance you're giving in that.
We're in the middle of the desert, and the camera was 50 feet away, and I had a simple line, like 3-word line, and just they're all set up, and it took a long time to set it up, and they were shooting with a lens so that they could see me. Everything was far away. When they're ready to go, and stop. Michael, what's my motivation? And he just took it seriously. What? He said, "What? You're upset."
Oh, so that was, you really intimidated him, huh?
I just have to finish to say he ended up being very charming, and he came to America and took me to lunch and offered to produce my one-person play in London.
But that was nice, though, huh? So
Yeah.
he really kind of was very interested in really being on good terms with you, huh? Wow. What about Peter Ustinov? Do you have any memories of him? I think he's a great
he went
actor.
with me. He was one of the few actors that always went with me to meetings that I was able to arrange through people I'd met with Palestinians in their homes, and Nablus, and it was fascinating.
He was a great humanitarian.
Yes, he was.
And he did a lot for people and people who were in need and travel.
Yes.
He's doing a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Were you fascinated by that? Was that something you could relate to?
I wasn't really thinking about it. All I was just aware that some of the cast would always come with me to some of the travels that we had, but he was always there.
Mm-hmm. And how about Carrie Fisher?
She was going through a bad time.
She spoke a lot about it, recently in her.
She did?
In her book,
About Israel?
Not about Israel. She spoke about her bad time in her life.
Yeah.
And you did also a movie version of Macbeth. A great movie version of Shakespeare's Macbeth. Is that something like it was done like a theater play, stage play?
Yes.
What is most interesting for you? I know you are basically a movie star, an actress on the screen, but you've also done a lot of plays, and a lot of people don't know how many plays, how many stage performances you've done over the years. What is most rewarding for you to do? Is it a different experience and both things are great, or what do you prefer mostly?
I think I'm a better stage actress than I am a movie actress. But I enjoy doing whatever is good material and working with good people.
Mm-hmm. I was fortunate to see Mornings at 7 years ago, but I hope you will do more stage work.
Thank you.
After the great success of Twin Peaks, you made another triumphant return to the horror scene when you played the wild and insane killer in Dario Argento's Trauma.
Oh, that was so funny. It was a lot of fun. I was a Romanian psychic.
Or Italian, weren't you?
No, I was Romanian. I hoped I was doing a Romanian accent.
All right.
But maybe it sounded Italian. I had a long black wig, long hair.
You look beautiful.
I did.
Yeah.
And I remember I lost my head.
You did?
In one scene, literally. And it happened to be the scene that my ex-husband came to visit that day. And so he could watch.
What was that like? You're actually beheading a lot of people in that film, and it ends up with you, your head being cut off. And
I talk afterwards. My head is on the floor, and I'm talking.
How was that done?
I was in some sort of a box with the wood, so that all you saw was the head for that shot. Yeah.
Wow. And they also made like a sculpture of your head, didn't
Yes, yeah, I hate that. I'm so claustrophobic. When they put the stuff in at the very end, you seal up your mouth and your nose, and they will put little straws in there, but still, your ears are closed up. Everything is very, very unpleasant.
That must be horrible.
It is horrible.
Wow, but that was really such a character. And you had done that before, right? When you did Tojimura.
Yes. But I'm never going to do it again, even if I lose the part.
No, but that is memorable. That is really quite a character also in that trauma movie.
Well, I don't know why I take these things not very seriously, and I have most fun. And I remember there was a scene. There's a seance that I'm conducting, and there's a table full of people, and we lose power in the middle of the seance, and all sorts of sounds happen, and screams, and then when the lights come back up, something has happened, somebody's been killed, or I don't know what, but in the dark, I don't know how I was supposed to, it just struck me as so funny when the lights go. Even now, and I would just laugh.
It's an amazing scene, and actually,
I'll have to see that again.
You'll have to see it.
Did you find anything different stylistically as a director from Dario Argento?
Not really. It was very intense. Good cameraman, and I think he hadn't worked with him before. And his daughter was also in the movie. I think may have been her first movie.
She was very young then.
Yes.
Asia.
Yes.
Argento, playing your daughter.
Yes.
You, Betsy Palmer, Fay Ray, Adrienne Barbeau. These are all women who are leading women in horror films, and none of them like horror movies.
And you know what I also heard?
None of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I heard actress Vivica Lindfors. Do you remember her?
Yes. Vivica Lindfors.
Yes,
that's how we say it.
Yeah, and she's Scandinavian as well. She was. And she also did a lot of those horror films, actually. And she hated doing them as well. She did Creepshow and I don't know, lots of those.
I worked with her. I did a radio show with her once.
So you worked with Vivica Lindfors?
Yes, I did.
What was that like? Two strong character women who'd done lots of horror films, but were basically doing other things.
We were doing No Exit on the radio, and she was so strong that sometimes she would improvise long sections of her dialogue, and we never knew when it was going to end. It was radio, live show.
Wow,
it was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And you never knew when she was going to go into it.
No. It must have been an interesting experience.
I'll say.
Yeah. And you never knew when what is your turn?
No.
Wow, that's interesting. Cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had an experience like that on stage once with someone.
Oh, you're not going to go into that, please. If we can get out. I was
doing the John Guare play, a new John Guare play, Marco Polo Sings a Soul. It was a workshop all summer long on Nantucket. We were all there in James Woods. It was his first play. He was very young, in his early 20s. Mm-hmm. And we opened the play. We were each in hospital beds on stage, facing the audience, and John Guare would hand us new material, sometimes just before we go on. And he did this to Jimmy, and then nobody told me about it. And so he started talking. And oh my God.
You also did another horror film in the 90s, 98, a more commercial teenage horror film, The Faculty.
Oh, yes.
And which was starring Elijah Wood and Usher and even Jon Stewart. What's it like generally for you to act with all these young kids?
Jon Stewart was in it?
Yeah, he was one of the faculty with you. And Salma Hayek. Salma Hayek, Jon Stewart, and you, and
Yeah.
B.B. Newirth.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, he was in it.
I
A younger
remember
version of it.
Usher coming over. It was before Usher was famous.
Yeah.
He came over to me, and on the first day I was sitting waiting. I was all ready to go off in the corner, and he came over, made a point of introducing himself and welcoming me to the set. And it was very sweet.
Very nice. Yeah. That's also an amazing role you
Jon
have.
Stewart?
Yeah. There you are together.
Oh my God.
He was a young actor at the time. That was long before he did the show.
Okay.
You've done a lot of, you work with James Dean, you work with everybody, but you find out later. That's wonderful. But what's it like for you also to play with to play opposite teenagers and young children? You've done that quite a lot as well. Is that a very different experience than working with these other legends or actors?
It is different. And nowadays, many of them, not the ones who really become really successful, but some of the others, they all kind of work in a funny way. My hearing is not like it was when I was 15 years old. But I'm not deaf, but they don't speak. I mean, in their normal life they speak, but as soon as they're acting, I don't know what that is.
I don't know what it is.
Some people say that's vying for your close-up.
In the old days, you learned to articulate more than they do now, or what you think?
Oh, I don't know. I'm like a smart ass. I don't know. All I know is that I don't understand it. Why there's so little energy in what they do in front of the camera.
I personally think that the most incredible performance you ever did, and the most beautiful film you ever did, is without a doubt in 1995, The Grass Harp.
Oh.
Absolutely. And you should have won an Academy Award for that part.
Goodness.
You should have. And everybody, so many people said that you should have won and would win, actually. I think that primarily that movie was overlooked by the Academy because it didn't make, is it like 11 million?
My awareness of what happened with the movie is different. I knew that there was friction between the director and the director's father and the producers, because Walter Matthau, I loved dearly, would shoot his mouth off whenever he felt like it. He telephoned. He thought that the producers were being cheap and not giving his son, who directed the movie, sufficient funds to do things properly. He ribbed them and said, you're cutting the donuts on the set in half to save money. And he called Army Archer, who was still writing his column in the trade papers, and talked to him we were in Alabama. And I was sitting right there while he was talking to him outside, and just complaining about everything that the producers were doing that he didn't think was right. And Army printed all of it. And the producers were very hurt and upset, felt that it was unfair, and they didn't have a chance to tell their part of it. And then when we came back to town, they just didn't support the movie at all. I was supposed to have a chance to loop some of my dialogue because I'd been sick, couldn't get my sound out, and they cut that time. And anyway, they released the film with not one tiny little ad in the newspapers, not one television ad. With that huge cast, they didn't spend 1 cent for a television ad. But nowadays, you really need that. And it came out. My best friends didn't know the movie had been released. It played for 2 weeks, and then they pulled the movie.
Really?
Yeah. So nobody saw it until it got to be seen on television later on.
That is an interesting thing.
It may be different in Europe.
It must have been. It must have been a little different in Europe, though, because that was. I remember big posters of it, and But that's too bad. Of course, all of that had nothing to do with your great performance in it, but it might have had an impact. Might have had something to say because of what happened there. Which is too bad, of course, when something like that happens.
But anyway, I'm glad that you liked it.
Of course I like it, and lots of people like it. I think everybody I know who have seen it.
It's a beautiful story.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And you kind of, you're so different than anything else I think you've ever played. Because it's so sweet, and you sound different, and your whole personality is different.
It was the real me.
It was the real you. Yeah, wow. And that shines through, though. It's a great thing. And in some kind of way, I think you reprised the role, well, in the same kind of story, just playing the Sissy Spacek character in A Christmas Memory a few years later, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was the same kind of story, wasn't it, basically?
Well, yes, but from a different point of view. And Patty Duke played my character. And I played the main sister. Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like for Sissy Spacek to finally get back at you there? Do you think she enjoyed that for Carrie?
In
the Grass Harp.
She, I think she had a lot of fun, and she even had a gold tooth made for her to slip over her real teeth.
Wow, that's great. And Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, were they great? Yeah, I know you worked with Jack Lemmon several times.
Yes.
Also, was he a good friend to you also personally? Did you know him personally?
No, we weren't. No, not really. No. But we were on location quite a long time, and he and Walter would often have dinner together. Alone, sitting in one of the two good restaurants in the little town we were in. And I'd glance over every once in a while. I'd see they were just eating, no communication, no verbal communication. Like an old married couple.
Yeah. The Odd Couple, right?
Yeah.
Like the movie they did.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So recently, in 2010, in the movie Hesher, you play a rather central role and another strong, sweet part as the grandmother of this young boy, where this young guy, a wild, unruly punk, moves in and takes over everything, but he develops a strong affinity for your character. And the movie was rough and emotional. And I would like to ask you, at the age of 80, and you're so vital still, how can you still do all these demanding performances? That's quite amazing.
I didn't think it was so hard. I didn't think it was demanding. It was fun. She was a sweet lady, and who didn't see anything bad happening around her. And this weird stranger walks in and with long, dirty hair, and walking around in his underwear, and they go, have a seat. Are you hungry? She was so accepting. She was right on the edge of some sort of senility.
Mm-hmm. And
but accepting, I like that.
Yeah. And you actually did a lot for Alzheimer's people, didn't you? You were talking a lot about that at one point, I remember, because you did this movie called The Road to Galveston, where you played this very Alzheimer.
That was a really terrific experience for me. There was a woman in Texas who changed her life by taking in half a dozen women who had no other place to go, who had dementia of some sort. And somebody wrote a screenplay about her. And so many weeks before we did that, I traveled there and spent some time there. Spent whole days in the place. And there was one character, the one that my character was written about, Wanda, who was incredible. She was quite elderly. And she had her own language. And she knew what she was saying, what she meant. But the words were all twisted around and had nothing to do with our reality. But she knew. And so I'd recorded a lot of what she said and had transcribed. And
You met her?
oh yes, I hung out with her.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
with
didn't
all
know it
the
was such a
ladies.
true character.
And she said such interesting things. And that in the actual script, the writer would say, wouldn't have any lines for her. Just, Wanda is, what was the word he used? Not babbling, but something like mumbling. But no lines. And so I used a lot of what she actually said that I thought might be appropriate or effective in those moments, and the director let me do that.
So you actually wrote your own dialogue?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a
Yeah.
great experience.
I thought it would not be as effective if I were undisciplined and allowed take after take to just be all over the place. I thought I was missing an opportunity to say things that seemed right, but nobody would understand. I just thought it was better that way.
Wow, that's great. That's a great thing to know about this movie, actually. Wonderful thing. Is there a role that you have never done, you haven't done, that you would like to do? Or some role you never got to do that you really wanted to do? Because you've played so many different parts.
Well, I kept not doing Amanda in Glass Menagerie because, like Maureen Stapleton, who couldn't get the voice of Lorette Taylor out of her ear, out of her head, I couldn't get Maureen Stapleton out of my head, so I kept turning it down. Now I'm too old. So that's one I wish I could have done.
So you kept turning it down, actually?
Yeah.
You were offered that, yeah?
Yeah. Now I'm ready. Now
you're ready.
Now I'm ready. Yeah.
And I really hope that you will keep on going, because you need to do a lot of more films and great performances. Really, I really, really hope you can do that. And you look so great for 80. How is that possible? If that's an inevitable question.
I haven't had a facelift, no. My best friend asked me, I hadn't seen her in a year and a half. What a friend.
What a friend.
No, I don't drink anymore, and I eat good food. And
you have a positive attitude about life?
Yeah.
And also about age?
And my father was very healthy and looked well for many, many years.
Yeah, great genes. And there are so many things that, I could talk about, and also personal stuff about your life, but everybody can read that in your autobiography.
Yes.
That is out now. Learning how to live out loud, to live out loud.
Learning to live out loud.
Out loud.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's from an Emile Zola quote. He said, "If you ask me what I came into the world to do, I will tell you. I came to live out loud."
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. And you were so wonderful, so alive, and so great.
Thank you.
Thank you.